Hello and welcome back to the Laramy-K Optician Works Training Center, where yes, we did take a little bit of a break for the last couple of months. As it happens so often, I was working on one project when I got a question over on YouTube that was a perfect match for what I was working on. So today we are going to take a look at how you resize or reshape a set of lenses to go from one frame into another to handle those emergency situations. We are going to call this customer-owned lenses into a new frame. Is this ever a good idea? Well, no, for a lot of reasons it's not. But we generally are doing this as an emergency repair or an emergency fix or an act of goodwill. As is always the case, the first thing we're going to do in this process is mark the lenses, an R, an L, an arrow up, and only after we have done that, assuming they are still in the frame, will we pop those two lenses out. Then you will literally walk the frame board, holding it up, compare it, look, shop, find a cheap, generic Zyle frame as close as you can get to the shape that you need. You might get lucky, you often do, either just forcing them in, a little bit of heat and popping them. If you don't, then we're going to hit the bench and I'm going to show you what to do. We're doing this as an emergency situation, as an act of goodwill. You control the conversation. We are not worried about the color of this frame. We are not worried about the style of it. We don't care if the PD is going to be off by 1 millimeter or 2 on each side, the OC, the progressive fit. There's really very little we can control about that. We're using the frame that wasn't designed for this particular lens. So, if the customer says, well, I don't like red, well, emergency situation, act of goodwill, they're just going to have to get over that, aren't they? And document, document, document. Make absolutely certain that you've written in every possible place on this customer's record what you have done. We will not reuse this frame. This frame is going to be overheated to force these lenses in. We are not going to warranty or guarantee it. You cannot come back and choose another one. Another really important piece of this is if they end up somewhere else, the optician there is trying to figure out what on earth that place down the street did. If they call and ask you, you can explain it. Don't say I didn't warn you. We are going to hit the bench. We're going to take a Sharpie. We're going to work with the Handstone. We're going to look at the edger function for frame change. You can do this, and you should be able to do this, and if your name badge says optician or you have a license, well, you sure as heck better be able to do this. Let's hit the bench. You all know that it is pretty rare for me to say that something is easy. In the big picture of things, cutting a lens down to fit another frame really isn't that hard to do. As I just mentioned on the whiteboard, the first thing we're going to do is mark up these lenses. So I'm going to go ahead and do that before moving that camera. If this was an $85 progressive and an $85 progressive fancy thing, AR, I'm trying to save a job or something, I would be hitting this with the surface tape to protect them from any harm. In this case, it's a pair of CR39 basic single vision lenses. Got my right, my left, little tick mark for up. All right, once I have got that done, then and only then would I pop my right lens out. I am going to take this right lens and I am literally going to walk my frame board, holding it up and looking at every single plastic frame I have on the board to try to get as close as I possibly can. Of course, I only have about 30 frames to choose from, and only 10 of those came even close. But this isn't bad. This is the lens that I need to cut down. I've got it marked from my right. I've got an up arrow. I've got my 3 lens meter dots for a 180 and an OC. This is the shape that I need to cut it down to. I'm going to lay that over that, and I'm going to keep it as centered as possible, left, right, and up, down. I'm not going to jam it over into the corner. I want to bring this down in a uniform pattern. So I'm going to get that lined up. Looks pretty darn good. Take my pen, trace it. I'm going to end up with that. When I take this lens, hit the handstone, and turn it into this shape and that size, then it's going to fit into that new frame that I found on the board. I'm going to hit the wheel now. I'm going to bring the other camera around, and I'm going to be rotating this lens. The trick to this whole thing is keeping this moving. So I'm going to be doing a rocking motion. You might want to practice this. I am sure that you have a tray sitting around in the lab that is just absolutely full of patient-owned lenses from other jobs. Just practice rotating those lenses around like that, and you'll get the hang of it, and it'll be a whole lot easier for you. So let's hit the handstone and start taking this down. Okay, I always like to talk about the teachable moment, and here is one for me. When I set this project up, I pulled some Trivex lenses. Now, this is a very old Handstone. It's got a 240 and a 100. The bevel placement part is 240. And you know what? It simply doesn't have enough abrasion to cut Trivex. So I was gonna fudge a little bit, and I went over to the edger and I started taking this thing down some more. My hand is tired. It's just not gonna work this way manually. So I have to switch from Trivex to poly, and let's start this over again. And here we go. Let's see. Look at that. Look at how much better that works. Keeping that thing rolling. There you are. Look at that material go flying off of there. That's more like it. Who would have thought? Okay, I am definitely at a point where I could force that lens in. There we go. Cutting a lens down from one frame to fit another by hand on the Handstone. Resizing or reshaping lenses using an edger. Good news, bad news. Good news is an edger can do that, and when it works really well. The bad news is that every single edger does it differently. I can't cover all the possible scenarios. Some edgers don't even have a frame change function. The Lexi has an LMU, or a lens measuring unit, a camera system that makes this incredibly easy, which I'm going to show you in just a second. Remember, if you have a really large lens that you need to take down to fit a smaller frame for an emergency situation, you can set your edger, or most edgers anyway, onto like wheel dressing mode. You'll get that roughing wheel spinning. Reach in there and take down that 4, 5, 6 millimeters of extra that you have using the roughing wheel, then switch over to your Handstone. Like all things, you just need to practice, practice, practice. Let's throw this on and go through the steps, which I mentioned are incredibly easy. will remember this is the frame that I went over to the board and found that my lenses from my old frame almost fit in here, but not quite. I could do this by hand, but I'm going to use the edger instead. I am going to load my frame. Going to get a beautiful frame trace, just as I would if I was making a pair of glasses from scratch with full lenses. I have all of my frame information, my beautiful trace, perfect. I even have frame curve and frame angle. Load up my blocks here. And I've got Trivex lenses, single vision, plastic frame, normal. I'm going to hit my frame change button. Now, if I had a lens blank that was, or a lens rather, excuse me, that was large enough that it acted like a full-size blank, I could simply run this job. I wouldn't need to hit the little frame change button. But what happens is if I get too close anywhere, if my one corner is really, really close to not cutting out, the frame change button adds 1.5 millimeters to the circumference of what it needs to work with. It's, in a way, it's recognizing that this already has a bevel on it. So it's going to account for taking that off and recreating a new one. In which case you may or may not choose to just simply do it by hand because you don't have that much you're taking down. This requires the smaller of the two lens tables. This is for the smaller cut lenses. And I'm going to go ahead, 62, I'm using a default PD, right center, center, over. I'm already to my blocking phase. I'm going to set my lens on here. Now, what needs to happen here? Well, obviously, what needs to happen here is that my lens, the darker black band here, falls outside the range of my lighter white, which is my actual frame. Here's my actual frame I'm cutting and putting that lens into. Here is the lens I'm cutting down. It fits outside that box. There is enough lens there to make this work. So I can go ahead and load up my block. And that lens onto my left. I could take this right lens, pop it in, hit my chuck button, hit start, and we're good to go. A couple of minutes, I can pop that out, pop this right into this frame, and that emergency situation will have been dealt with. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure that every lens you reshape comes from Laramy-K. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Watching me on Facebook, give us a like, leave us a comment, and I will see you again next week. The Lexi has an LMU, or a lens measuring unit.